As your body begins to relax and your breathing begins to slow, your consciousness is either creating prosperity or perpetuating poverty. It is either aligning with divine abundance or reinforcing human limitation. There is no pause, no neutral ground, no moment when you are not manifesting. Your subconscious is always at work, always listening, always building your tomorrow based on what you impressed upon it today. Based on what you're impressing upon it right now in these final moments before sleep. The only question is, what instructions are you giving it? What images are you planting? What beliefs are you watering? What consciousness are you commanding it to manifest into form? Tonight, that changes completely. Tonight, we plant seeds of divine prosperity into the fertile soil of your sleeping mind. Tonight, you will learn what Florence Scovel Shinn called the spiritual mechanics of manifestation. Not through willpower or force or struggle, not through competition or manipulation or control, but through alignment with divine law, through understanding of spiritual principle, through the power of your words spoken with faith. You will not stumble into wealth by accident. You will not wake up prosperous simply because you wish for it, or hope for it, or desperately need it. But you will command it through consciousness. You will speak it through decree. You will receive it through spiritual understanding. You will attract it through alignment with the infinite supply that Florence taught is available to every single person without exception, without limitation, without condition. And it begins tonight, right now, in these 3 sacred hours, as your conscious mind, the part that doubts and analyzes and fears and resists, finally rests, and your subconscious mind, the part that simply accepts and believes and manifests, opens like a flower at dawn, ready to receive new truth, ready to absorb new identity, ready to create new reality. Before we begin this sacred work, before you drift into sleep and transformation, I ask you to make this commitment visible and public. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the moment you declare something in writing, the moment you speak something aloud, the moment you make your intention known to the universe, you set spiritual law into motion. Your word becomes your wand. Your declaration becomes your destiny. Pause this video right now if you're still awake and do 3 specific things. First, press the subscribe button and turn on all notifications. This journey requires consistency, not casual interest. You'll need to return here night after night for 21 consecutive nights. That's not arbitrary. 21 days is the minimum time required for new consciousness to become permanent, for new neural pathways to solidify, for new identity to replace old identity. Subscribe now so you can find this easily every single night. Second, press the like button. This isn't about vanity or analytics. This is about spiritual physics. When you take action toward your prosperity, even something as simple as pressing a button, even something that takes only 1 second, you signal to the universe that you're ready to receive, that you're willing to participate, that you're claiming your wealth, like this video right now. Third, and most importantly, go to the comment section right now and type these exact words. I commit to 21 nights starting tonight. Then add your location, your city, your state, your country. Make it public. Make it real. Make it a covenant with yourself and with divine intelligence. Then, over the next 21 nights, return to your comment and update it. On night 3, add night 3 completed. On night 7, add night 7 completed. When you finish all 21 nights, add your testimony. Share what shifted. Share what manifested. Share what transformed. This commitment isn't optional if you want results. This is your covenant with prosperity. Go now to the comments. Make that declaration. We'll wait. Welcome back. You've taken the first step. The universe has registered your commitment. Divine intelligence has heard your decree. Your transformation has officially begun. Now let me explain what's actually happening in your brain and in your spirit right now, in this precious transition from waking consciousness to sleeping consciousness, in this liminal space between the material world and the spiritual realm. Modern neuroscience has discovered what Florence Scovel Shinn knew through spiritual revelation over 100 years ago. Your subconscious mind is most receptive to new programming in the moments immediately before sleep and during the sleep cycles themselves. As you lie down right now and close your eyes, as you allow your body to sink into the mattress and your breath to slow and deepen, your brain waves are shifting. They're slowing from beta waves, which is your normal waking state, active and analytical and resistant to change, to alpha waves, which is relaxed and receptive and open to suggestion. Then, as you drift closer to actual sleep, you'll enter theta wave state. This is deeply hypnotic consciousness. This is where visualization becomes reality. This is where the boundary between imagination and manifestation dissolves. This is where your subconscious cannot distinguish between something you're vividly imagining and something you're physically experiencing. Finally, you'll drop into delta wave state, deep restorative sleep, where complete restructuring of consciousness occurs, where your brain quite literally rewires itself, where old patterns can be dissolved and new patterns can be installed. During theta and delta states, your conscious mind, the part that says that's impossible or I can't afford that or people like me don't become wealthy, goes completely offline. Your subconscious mind, which has no capacity to judge or reject or analyze, which simply accepts whatever is impressed upon it with feeling and repetition, opens completely like a door with no lock. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn insisted on speaking prosperity decrees before sleep. This is why she taught her students to visualize abundance as they drifted off. This is why she emphasized that the final thoughts before sleep are the most powerful, creative thoughts of your entire day. She understood that the sleeping hours are when divine substance, the invisible spiritual material from which all wealth and health and success and love are formed, can be impressed upon consciousness without any resistance whatsoever from doubt or fear or logic. Scientists today call this neuroplasticity. Your brain literally reconstructs itself during sleep based on what you focused on before sleeping. New neural pathways form, connecting neurons in new patterns. Old limiting pathways that no longer serve you weaken and eventually dissolve completely. Your very identity reconstructs at the cellular level. Florence called this the law of consciousness creating circumstances. She taught that the visible is always made out of the invisible. Your bank account, your income, your financial situation, all of it is made out of consciousness, out of your dominant thoughts and beliefs about money. Change your consciousness about wealth, and your bank account must change to match it. This is law, not theory. Tonight, for 3 full hours, you will saturate your consciousness with prosperity while your analytical mind cannot interfere, cannot argue, cannot resist. This is divine technology that's been available for thousands of years, but that most people never access because they fill their final waking moments with television or worry or social media or replaying the day's frustrations. You're different. You're here. You're ready. You're willing. And that willingness is about to transform everything. Let me tell you a story that perfectly demonstrates how this works. A story that proves the power of nightly consciousness work. A story that shows you exactly what's possible when you commit to 21 nights of reprogramming. There was a woman who came to Florence Scovel Shinn many decades ago in a state of complete financial desperation. Her name was Margaret, and she was a widow with 3 young children, ages 5, 7, and 9. Her husband had died suddenly in an industrial accident, leaving her with no life insurance because the policy had lapsed just 2 months before his death. There were no savings. There were only debts, mountains of debts that she couldn't even calculate because she was too afraid to open the letters that arrived daily from creditors. She was living in 2 cramped rooms that a distant relative had grudgingly allowed her to occupy. And that relative made it clear every single day through looks and sighs and cutting remarks that Margaret was a burden, that she was taking advantage, that she needed to figure something out soon because charity has its limits. Margaret had no job skills. She'd been a homemaker her entire adult life, which was common and expected in that era. She was 42 years old, which in the 1920s meant she was considered too old to start over. Too old to learn new things, too old to be hired for any position that paid a living wage. She had no family wealth, no connections, no education beyond basic literacy and arithmetic. When she first met Florence at a lecture that a friend had practically dragged her to, Margaret could barely speak without crying. Her hands shook. Her voice cracked. She said, "I don't understand why God has forsaken me. I've been a good person my entire life. I've been faithful. I've prayed every single day, multiple times a day. But nothing changes. Everything gets worse. We're going to end up on the street. My children are going to starve. I can't see any way out." Florence listened patiently with that calm, knowing presence that so many of her students described. She let Margaret cry. She let her speak all of her fear. And then, when Margaret finally fell silent, exhausted from her own desperation, Florence said something that stopped her completely. "My dear, God has not forsaken you, but you have forsaken God's law. You've been praying from consciousness of lack, and lack is what you're manifesting. Your prayers are filled with fear, and fear is what returns to you. You're speaking poverty with every word, and poverty is what you're commanding into form." Margaret was confused. She said, "But I'm praying for prosperity. I'm begging God to help me. I'm asking for money every single day. How is that speaking poverty?" Florence smiled gently and explained, "Begging is the language of lack. Asking is the consciousness of not having. Commanding is the language of prosperity. Claiming is the consciousness of already possessing. You must stop praying as a beggar, hoping for scraps, and start decreeing as a daughter of the divine, claiming your inheritance. You must stop asking God to give you what you need and start thanking God for what is already yours in the spiritual realm, waiting only for your consciousness to claim it and bring it into material form." She taught Margaret a specific practice, a nightly ritual that would become the foundation of Margaret's complete transformation. Every night before sleep, Margaret was to lie in bed, place her hands over her heart, take 3 deep breaths, and then speak this decree aloud 3 times with as much feeling and faith as she could muster. "I cast this burden of financial worry upon the Christ within, and I go free to have abundance and prosperity. My children and I are divinely and abundantly supplied. Infinite intelligence is now manifesting perfect wealth in my life. I give thanks that this is already so." Florence explained further, "You'll feel like you're lying at first. That feeling is perfect. You're not lying. You're declaring spiritual truth that hasn't yet manifested in the material realm. But by decreeing it nightly before sleep, by speaking it with emotion and repetition, you're impressing it upon your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind, which controls 90% of your behavior and all of your manifestation, will begin to create whatever you impress upon it with feeling and faith. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what's true now and what you're claiming as true. It only knows what you repeat with emotion. So you repeat prosperity, you repeat abundance, you repeat divine supply, and your subconscious begins to manifest circumstances that match those words." Margaret was skeptical, but desperate. That first night, she lay in her borrowed bed in that cramped, borrowed room, and she whispered the decree 3 times, crying through every single word because it felt so impossible, so far from her reality, so much like a lie. But she did it again the 2nd night, and the 3rd night, and the 4th. By the 7th night, something subtle shifted. She noticed she wasn't crying anymore when she said the decree. The words still felt strange, still felt untrue, but they no longer felt painful. By the 14th night, she found herself saying it with a strange sense of calm, almost as if some part of her was beginning to believe it, or at least beginning to consider that it might be possible. Then, on the 18th day, not night but day, something extraordinary happened. A letter arrived. It was from a lawyer representing her late husband's former employer. Apparently, there had been a small company insurance policy that no one had known about. Not her husband, not the company managers, not anyone. It had been in place for years, automatically deducted from his wages in tiny amounts. The company had been searching for her to release the funds. The amount was $850. To put that in perspective for the era, that was more than a full year's wages for most working people. To Margaret, it was a miracle beyond comprehension. It was enough to pay off every single debt. It was enough to secure a modest apartment. It was enough to provide living expenses for 6 months or more if she was careful. She immediately went to find Florence, certain that this was the end of the story. Certain that this was the answered prayer, and now everything would be fine. But Florence said something that surprised her. This is not the end. This is confirmation that the law works. This is proof that your consciousness is shifting. But you must continue the nightly decree. You must not stop now. Now that you've seen evidence that divine supply responds to your word, you must speak with even more faith, even more conviction, even more certainty. Margaret continued the practice. She added another decree that Florence taught her. Infinite intelligence knows the perfect way for me to prosper. I am led to my perfect wealth. Doors open before me that no person can shut. Divine opportunities appear in my path daily. Within 2 months, something else manifested. A friend mentioned in passing that a local school was looking for someone to manage their kitchen operations. Someone to order supplies, manage kitchen staff, keep accounts, plan meals within budget. The job required organization, practical wisdom, basic arithmetic, and the ability to feed many people with limited resources. Margaret realized she had been doing exactly that for 20 years as a homemaker, stretching every penny, feeding a family on almost nothing, organizing a household, managing everything. She interviewed, terrified but determined. She was hired. The salary was $35 per month, which was enough to support herself and her children modestly but adequately. But even that wasn't the end of the story. Within a year, Margaret had saved enough to start a small side business from her home, preparing baked goods and simple meals for working people who had no time to cook. Within 3 years, she had opened a small restaurant. Within 5 years, she owned her own home outright, something her husband had never been able to achieve despite working his entire adult life. Within 7 years, she was employing 6 people and had become known throughout the community as a successful businesswoman. When she returned to Florence after those 7 years to express her gratitude, she brought a financial gift, a substantial donation to support Florence's work. She said, "It still seems like magic to me. How did everything change so completely? I'm the same person. The world is the same world, but my entire life is different." Florence replied with words that would become central to her teaching. It wasn't magic. It was law, spiritual law. You changed your consciousness from poverty to prosperity through nightly decree, through faithful repetition, through speaking your word with belief. And the universe had no choice but to manifest circumstances that matched your new consciousness. Your outer world simply reflected your inner transformation. You didn't chase money. You became wealthy in consciousness, and money chased you. This is what we're doing tonight, and for the next 20 nights after this one. We're changing consciousness through decree, through story, through affirmation, through repetition. And over these next 3 hours, as you sleep, as you dream, as you drift through theta and delta states, that transformation will take root in your subconscious mind, in your neural pathways, in your very identity. Now it's time for you to prepare fully for sleep. Lower the volume to barely audible, just loud enough that you can hear my voice like a gentle stream in the background of your awareness. If you're using headphones, make sure they're comfortable enough to sleep in, or better yet, use speakers so you can move freely during the night without restriction. Get into your most comfortable sleeping position. Let your body sink completely into the bed. Feel the support beneath you. Close your eyes gently. Take 3 slow, deep breaths. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for a count of 4. Breathe out through your mouth for a count of 4. Again. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. One more time. Breathe in slowly. Hold. Release completely. You don't need to concentrate on every word I say from this point forward. You don't need to stay awake. In fact, the goal is to fall asleep naturally and quickly. Once you're asleep, the real work begins. Your subconscious will continue absorbing every decree, every story, every affirmation, every spiritual principle, reprogramming your consciousness at the deepest possible level while your conscious mind cannot interfere. Everything continues working while you sleep. Your subconscious never sleeps. Divine intelligence never sleeps. The law never sleeps. From this point forward, my voice will remain calm, steady, consistent, and hypnotic. There will be no sudden changes, no loud interruptions, no jarring transitions. Just a gentle flow of spiritual wisdom and prosperity consciousness, like a river of divine substance flowing through your sleeping mind for the next 3 hours. Let yourself drift now. Let yourself dream. Let yourself transform. Let us begin the deep work. There is a decree that Florence Scovel Shinn taught to thousands of her students, a decree that became legendary among those who practiced it faithfully. A decree that released more financial burden and opened more doors to prosperity than perhaps any other single spiritual practice she ever shared. It's called the Burden Decree, and it's based on a profound spiritual principle that most people never understand. You cannot carry financial worry and prosperity consciousness at the same time. They cannot coexist in the same mind. Worry is a form of prayer, but it's prayer for what you don't want. When you lie awake at night rehearsing your financial problems, calculating and recalculating how you'll pay bills, imagining worst-case scenarios, you're not just thinking, you're decreeing poverty. You're instructing your subconscious to create more lack. You're speaking your word. And your word is your wand, and you're waving that wand over a future of limitation. The Burden Decree interrupts this pattern completely. Here's how it works spiritually and practically. You identify the specific financial burden that's weighing most heavily on you right now. Perhaps it's unpaid bills. Perhaps it's debt that feels insurmountable. Perhaps it's unemployment and the fear of how you'll survive. Perhaps it's an unexpected expense that you cannot see how to meet. Whatever it is, you name it specifically, and then you consciously, deliberately, with full intention, cast it upon what Florence called the Christ within. Now, this isn't religious terminology in a denominational sense. Florence used Christ to mean the divine intelligence within every human being, the part of you that's eternally connected to infinite supply, the part of you that existed before you were born and will exist after you die, the part that knows only abundance and possibility and divine provision. When you cast your burden upon the Christ within, you're not denying that the problem exists in the material realm. You're not pretending that the bills aren't real or that the debt has vanished. You're doing something far more powerful. You're refusing to carry it in consciousness. You're releasing it to divine intelligence, which knows how to solve every problem, which sees solutions that your human mind cannot see, which has access to resources that you don't even know exist. Listen to the decree now. Let these words wash over you like warm water. You don't need to memorize them tonight. They'll be repeated multiple times over these 3 hours. They'll sink into your subconscious through repetition. Just let them enter your awareness now. I cast this burden of financial worry upon the Christ within, and I go free to have abundance and prosperity. I cast this burden of unpaid bills upon the divine within, and I go free to have my needs met instantly and effortlessly. I cast this burden of debt upon infinite intelligence, and I go free to have perfect financial freedom. I cast this burden of fear about the future upon God, and I go free to have divine supply flowing to me now. Notice the structure of each line. First, You cast the specific burden. You name it. You acknowledge it. You release it. Then, in the same breath, you claim the freedom and the prosperity that exists on the other side of that burden. This is crucial. You're not just releasing the negative, you're claiming the positive simultaneously. Florence taught that nature abhors a vacuum. If you simply try to remove worry without replacing it with faith, the worry will return because you've left empty space. But when you cast the burden and immediately claim prosperity in the same decree, you're filling that space with divine substance. You're not leaving room for the worry to return. Before you drift into deeper sleep tonight, if you're still awake in this moment, whisper this decree softly. If you've already fallen asleep, your subconscious is hearing it now and absorbing it, and will repeat it in the background of your dreams, in the theta state where miracles of manifestation occur. You're free from financial burden. You're free to prosper. You're free to receive. You're free. You're free. You're free. Now we begin to install prosperity identity through affirmation. These affirmations are spoken in first person, present tense. They're not wishes. They're not hopes. They're not goals for the future. They're declarations of spiritual truth existing right now in this moment. As you hear them, even as you sleep, your subconscious absorbs them as fact, as reality, as the truth of who you are. Let these words float through your awareness like leaves on a gentle stream, effortless, natural, true. I am wealthy. Money flows to me easily and naturally from multiple sources. I am divinely provided for every single day. Abundance is my birthright as a child of the infinite. Prosperity comes to me from expected sources and from sources I never imagined possible. I attract wealth automatically because I am aligned with divine supply at the level of consciousness. I am financially blessed beyond all measure and beyond all human understanding. Money loves me. I love money. We flow together in perfect harmony without resistance or guilt. I am worthy of wealth simply because I exist. I deserve abundance not because of what I do, but because of who I am. I accept prosperity easily and gratefully without questioning whether I've earned it or whether I deserve it. I spend money wisely and joyfully, knowing that infinite supply replenishes whatever I spend. I save money naturally and consistently, watching my reserves grow month after month. I invest money intelligently and profitably, making decisions from wisdom rather than fear. I give money generously and freely, knowing that giving creates circulation and circulation creates increase. I receive money constantly and abundantly from all directions, from sources known and unknown. My consciousness creates my circumstances, and my consciousness is one of total prosperity, absolute abundance, complete financial freedom. The universe is lavish, extravagant, abundant, generous, unlimited. I am made in the image and likeness of the universe. Therefore, I am lavish, extravagant, abundant, generous, unlimited. I think wealthy thoughts moment by moment. I feel wealthy feelings in my body. I take wealthy actions in my daily life. Wealth is my identity, not my goal. I am not becoming wealthy. I am already wealthy in consciousness. Therefore, I am wealthy in form. The invisible has become visible. Let me explain what's happening in your mind right now, what's occurring at the level of your subconscious as you drift between waking and sleeping, as you move through these various brainwave states. Your subconscious mind controls approximately 90% of your behavior, your decisions, your reactions, your beliefs, your actions. It was programmed primarily during the first 7 years of your life, before your conscious mind had developed the ability to filter or question information. It has been running on autopilot ever since, creating your reality automatically based on those early childhood impressions and the repetitive thoughts you've had throughout your life. If you grew up hearing phrases like, "money doesn't grow on trees," or we can't afford that, or rich people are greedy, or you have to work hard for money, or there's never enough, those statements became subconscious programs. They installed themselves like software running in the background of your mind. They filter every opportunity, every idea, every possibility through a lens of limitation and scarcity. Your conscious mind, the thinking and analyzing part that you identify as you, cannot override the subconscious through logic or willpower alone. You cannot think your way into wealth if your subconscious is programmed for poverty. This is why positive thinking by itself doesn't work. This is why affirmations spoken once or twice feel empty and produce no results. This is why vision boards gather dust in closets while life remains unchanged. But there's a way in. There's a door that opens. The subconscious can be reprogrammed through repetition combined with emotion, especially during the hypnagogic state, that twilight zone between waking and sleeping, which you're likely moving through right now if you haven't already drifted into sleep. In this state, your conscious mind's defenses are down. It's not arguing anymore. It's not analyzing or questioning or resisting. Your subconscious is open, receptive, absorbent, like wet cement ready to receive new impressions, like fresh soil ready to receive new seeds. Every affirmation you're hearing tonight is a new instruction to your subconscious. Every story is a new possibility it's considering as real. Every decree is a new command it's preparing to execute in your waking life. Over these 3 hours, as you cycle through different stages of sleep, as you move from light sleep to deep sleep to REM sleep and back again multiple times, your brain will process and consolidate everything you've heard. New neural pathways will form, physically form, connecting the concept of me with the concept of wealthy. Old pathways that connected me with struggling will weaken with each passing hour. This is neuroplasticity in action. Your brain is physically restructuring itself right now in this moment based on the content of this audio, based on the consciousness you're absorbing. Florence Scovel Shinn didn't know the scientific terminology. She lived decades before neuroscience discovered these principles, but she understood the spiritual mechanics perfectly. She taught that the subconscious has no reasoning power, no ability to judge or reject. It simply accepts whatever is impressed upon it with feeling and faith, and then manifests that impression into physical form through your behavior, your decisions, your opportunities, your circumstances. Tonight, you're impressing prosperity at the deepest level possible. Tomorrow, you'll begin to manifest it, not through effort, not through force, but through alignment, through new consciousness expressing itself naturally. Let me tell you another story, a story of a man who proved this principle in a way that astonished even Florence herself. There was a man named Robert who came to one of Florence Scovel Shinn's lectures in New York City in the early 1920s. He was a skilled carpenter, highly talented at his craft, hardworking and honest in all his dealings. But despite working 6 days a week, sometimes 7, despite laboring from sunrise to sunset, he could barely support his wife and 2 young children.